And we're back with some more Dyson Sphere Program and our little xenomorph looking mech. I really do like that you can upgrade the mech now. But anyway, I have tried to start this video a couple of times. The first time I got stopped due to technical difficulties last Friday. I managed to, I think, fix those eventually. I haven't been having any intermittent crashes for a while. Hopefully it's fixed. But the second time, I did a bunch of stuff, but I don't think I really get across the fun parts of this game. The thing is, the building in this game is not the really fun part. The fun part is figuring out what you're trying to do and how you're going to do it, and sort of, you know, the actual laying down of the stuff, that's just the completion of all of the thinking that went into it. So what I want to try and do is explain my thinking and my reasoning for why I'm trying to do what I'm doing, and we'll go a little bit into the builds, but it's mainly about why we want to do what we want to do. Now, first things first. This here is the solar system we started in, and this is all the resources that are in it. We've still got lots of iron and copper. Silicon's a bit low. In fact, we're having, when we're maxed out on production, we have problems with silicon. So we're going to need to start bringing in more. Stone, we're fine. Coal is actually going down quite quickly. Oh, crude oil, fire. You know what? Doesn't matter. We've got a decent amount of resources here, and at some point, though, we will have to spread out and start colonizing neighboring systems. Namely, just to get resources. They've loads more resources there, and we will have to get them. However, colonizing other planets is, well, it's painful. The reason being is, well, power. Like, do you want to spend hours putting these sort of solar panel belts around a planet? No, that just takes too long. Or you can use lots of wind turbines, same problem. You can, you can jury-rig stuff by hooking yourself up to some coal or burnable stuff and hooking up some thermal generators, but that's only a stopgap. What we're trying to do is get portable power. And the best form of portable power, artificial star. This thing generates 72 megawatts of power, and that's before you put Proliferator on top of the antimatter fuel cells that go in it. This stuff is great. Normally what you can do is just hop down to a planet, chuck down a bunch of these artificial stars, feed them in a bunch of antimatter fuel from another planet, and this thing will run. You just basically put down an outpost, stick down your mining colonies, plug in this power, and you're done. Fast, efficient, easy, and it's the preferred method of colonizing. Problem is, that needs a lot of sunshine. You see, over here I've set these things to solar collection. They collect photons. Those photons can get split, or you put them through a splitter, and each one of these is able to turn into one antimatter fuel cell. Thing is, you need a lot of sunshine for this. Not a problem. We've got plenty of sunshine around here. So, let me try something here. We want to switch this from photon generation to power generation. Look at that. 12.4 megawatts of power. So, what these things are really good for is making portable power and also getting new power on a planet's surface. So these things fit two things simultaneously, making them absolutely awesome. As you can see, producing about 4.7 of these per minute, which means we can make about 4.7 antimatter fuel rods per minute. Taking all this knowledge, the plan is as follows. We want to build a massive Dyson sphere. Well, not massive, but large enough that it can cover our power needs while still leaving plenty of leftover sunlight to turn into antimatter fuel cells, and then we can use those antimatter fuel cells to set up colonies elsewhere. Problem is, the system doesn't have enough resources to do all of that. Well, no, it might have, but we burned a whole bunch on research to get to this point, so we're kind of starting to run out, and if we start making antimatter fuel cells here, things are just going to get more inconvenient. So instead, what we want to do is the following. We want to make a planet that builds Dyson spheres. Its whole purpose will be to produce those little ships. See those ships that are flying out to make the nodes? These little nodes here. If we could make, say, about 100 of those ships a minute on some foreign colony that's unrelated to this one, that has its own resource supplies, and we can churn out 100 of these a minute, then we can build a Dyson sphere in that system. That Dyson sphere system can then power the production of those 100 ships per minute. And then once that Dyson sphere is finished and it's doing all its powering, we can start firing those ships elsewhere, as in shipping them to other planets and building Dyson spheres wherever we need them. Preferably somewhere where we could then, harness it, turn it into antimatter fuel cells, and then use those antimatter fuel cells to further fuel our expansion. So basically, we want to find a good, nice system to work in where we can build 100 of those rocket ship Dyson sphere producing buildings, or ships, so that we can put down enough of these to start harvesting enough sunlight to make antimatter, and then we're going to use that antimatter to sort of power the Empire's expansion. Bit of a bootstrap paradox, though, because to do that 100 ships per minute build, we'll have to colonize another planet, and we need to put an energy source on it, and I am not doing solar. So here's the ideas. Time to head to our trusty calculator. Yeah, I spent way too much time in here, especially when I had a bit of downtime there recently. It was I spent a bit of time with a notepad and paper trying to figure stuff out. It's so much handier when you have a calculator, though. All right, 100 carrier rockets per minute. Now, we chose 100 because it's a nice round number and it's just probably not that horrifying to make. Well, that was my initial thoughts. However, if we get all the way down to the bottom here, you'll notice it is 1.4 gigawatts of power to produce all of this, roughly, give or take. However, we're going to seriously cut down on that. The first things first is we kind of want to remove oil from the mix if at all possible. So what you can do here is you can go down and you can look under oil, and we'll have a look at items and see where all the oil is going. It's basically going towards making sulfuric acid, plastic, and organic crystals. The thing is, I like to remove oil because it requires an awful lot of these plasma refiners. I mean, how many is it? 264? What? No. That's just not going to happen. So, first thing we do, we're going to go to organic crystals up here. Instead of getting organic crystals by making them from oil, we're going to include organic crystal veins. So we're going to need to find a place or some place that's got places close by that has these organic crystal veins that we can mine directly. Once that's selected, deselect those. Perfect. Now, all of that comes from there. If we go back down to our oil, have a look at it. Now, its only purposes are to make sulfuric acid. That's it. And sulfuric acid, well, we're going to make some changes to that too. Recipe for that, we're going to pump it out of a sulfuric acid ocean. Where are you? Yeah, down here. And yeah, we'll get rid of the one that requires oil and water and stuff like that. I try and always settle a system that's got organic crystals and sulfuric acid, because if you can get those two, basically no need for oil. And once you remove oil from the mix, that's even dropped our power requirements by about almost half a gigawatt. It's just there's reasons some of these resources are included. Now, another nice thing would be to get our hands on fire ice. Now, most places do have them, so yeah, let's include fire ice in here as well. Fire ice is either mineable or findable in terms of gas giants. You see, this stuff is used for a lot of things, like it's used for carbon nanotubes, casimir crystals, and solar sails. So we're going to need a bunch of this. Normally, like, you might be able to get away from some of the carbon nanotubes, but not really. You're better off just going with fire ice if you can. If you've got to make this any other way, you're going to require graphite and acid. Now, that's not terrible, but we're trying to save our graphite because our graphite comes from coal, and the coal we're going to be using a whole bunch of to make Proliferate, to make this even easier on ourselves. Now, of course, you don't come up with all these ideas all at once. You're just sort of going through it, figuring out bits and bobs here and there to try and see how you're going to get this all to work. And it's basically just a case of hammering it down to simplify this, make it require less power. We've already gone from like 1.4 gigawatts or almost 1.5 to 800 megawatts, which is a nice drop. Now, next, I think it's time we start proliferating. So, first things first, let's just chuck Proliferate Mark III on everything. Right, we are just going to proliferate the bejeebus out of the lot. There's some stuff here that's missing Proliferate. With everything proliferated, we can actually cut down on the amount of machines we use. However, power consumption does go up a wee bit. But for now, we have like the guts of a plan. Get ourselves a bunch of Proliferate, use that on all of the items to make it easier, and that way we don't have to build as many machines, which should keep our footprint a little bit smaller on the planet, which means we can exploit more of the resources on it. However, there's problems with this. First, we need to know how much coal the system has because, well, if the coal runs out, this whole system kind of breaks down, and knowing how much coal it has will tell us how long we can run this particular build in that system before we drain it dry. Also, I would like to expand this later on to about 300 to 400 ships per minute. So having a little bit of reserves would be nice. I mean, we can always import stuff from abroad, but, you know, let's check. So the first thing I did was go to every single planetary system, and what I did was I located all the ones that had fire ice giants. Well, ice giants. See, ice giant planets give you fire ice, which is an infinitely renewable resource from the fire ice giant, or from the ice giant, and then it also gives you hydrogen as well. So looking around, there was some promising candidates. This one's actually pretty good, but there's no organic crystal. There's a bunch of other stuff that is not there. Now, I could go through all of the ones I went through and looking through all of the systems, but I'll show you the one I eventually settled on, which was this one. Iota Telescopia. One thing, it's still got crude oil, which you're going to need. It's only got 2.3 million fire ice. This is not an infinitely renewable resources, but one of the main things that drew me here was this thing has a hydrogen giant, or a gas giant. This thing produces hydrogen and deuterium. We need both of these things for the build we're doing, and I thought it's very handy to have them. It's also got organic crystal and a few other bits and bobs, but this gives us the baseline. So usually what I do is I grab a screenshot of this corner over here, and then once I have that, we can do some testing. There is 18,642,907 coal on this planetary system, right? These numbers are all going to be a little bit different now, of course, because, well, I kind of had gone through the building of some of the stuff on that planet before I decided to redo things in a way for more of a top-level perspective as opposed to just the nitty-gritty of building stuff. Just going over the whys and whys we do things as opposed to the hows. So, this is the amount of coal that's on the planet. This is how much coal our theoretical build is going to burn. So we want to divide this by, 3,378. Then that will tell us that will give us 5,518 minutes of production. We divide that by 60. That tells us it's 91 hours. That's actually pretty good. But we can probably make it better. The problem is if we divide that by 4, if we go up to 400, we'll only get 22 hours of production before we drain all the coal reserves. There's efficiency bonuses you can get for doing science. There's a whole bunch of things you can get to extend the length of this. But what I'd like to do is maybe make this production a little bit leaner. So, what we've gained access to here as well on this system, which I didn't realize at the time and was looking out for it, was kimberlite ore. Now, that may sound not wonderful, but if we come down here, you can see you can make diamond out of refined carbon. Or you can make diamond out of kimberlite ore, which means we don't have to waste refined carbon on making it. So right now we're at 3,378 coal. Instead we turn this on, turn that off, and we're down to 1,871 coal. We've managed to drastically expand how long our coal reserves will last just by including the little bit of kimberlite ore that's on this planet. That kimberlite there, perfect. Now how long will that kimberlite last us, of course? We should probably double check that before we commit. 426.8 kimberlite ore per hour. That gives us 12,960 minutes. Divide that by 60. That gives us how many hours it'll last. So if we're just building 100 rockets per minute, 216 hours. If we build 400 rockets per minute by quadrupling everything here, 54 hours. Should be enough. I mean, 400 rockets a minute for 54 hours is a lot. We would be very good on the rocketry front, and we would probably have built a decent Dyson Sphere. And at that point, we would probably have more than enough energy to start expanding out to further areas and pulling resources from farther abroad. However, there are other efficiency gains that can be made here. Let's take this copper ore here. We have 33 million in the system, and we're only going to be burning like 1,211. So we'll divide that by 1,211.2. That means that's going to last 27, like a lot of minutes, an awful lot of minutes, which is an awful lot of hours. And even if we quadruple our build, we'll still have 115 hours worth of copper. So there's no point actually proliferating the copper if we don't want to. I mean, why bother? There's no need. We'll consume some more copper, but this reduces the stresses on our coal just a little bit. By just a little bit, I mean, not much actually now that I look at this. We're at 1871. That drops it to 1820. You know what? I don't think it's worth it. I think I'd more rather the consistency. However, there is one area where we can save a whole bunch of effort. Where is it? Deuterium. Now, the thing is, people were saying you can put proliferate on your hydrogen. There's these fractionator things. You spin hydrogen through them, and it has a chance to produce deuterium. And you can put proliferate on it, but the proliferate only helps speed it up. So we're just going to get rid of that. Right now, we are using how much? 1871. However, if we get rid of this from the deuterium production, that will drop to 1763, which is one of the biggest drops we can make. That just saves us so much effort if we do it that way. To make this whole build work, there's a few things we need. One, 910 megawatts of power. Oh, God. So we need 910 megawatts of power to bootstart it, or to bootstrap it. Once it's up and running and producing those 100 rockets per minute, it will quickly put together a Dyson Sphere, and in a few hours, it will have produced enough of these rockets and enough parts of the Dyson Sphere, well, a couple hours, a few hours, let's say. Just say a few hours. We don't know what the exact figures are. But in a few hours, depending on the sun we're around, it will produce enough Dyson Sphere for us to actually draw the power to support this whole system. So we need to start breaking this into chunks. So there's two things. One, we're going to need to get a bootstrap power supply. So that in a minute. And two, I'm just going to show you how we break off chunks of this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab this Proliferate Mark III. And we're just going to open up a new tab. And yeah, we're going to copy paste the link. And this gives us the same thing again, but we want to switch this over to just Proliferate Mark III. And how many items per minute is this producing? We want about 800. So give us 800 items per minute, please. And it's giving us 986. Why is it giving us 986? Yeah, this is where it gets weird. It kind of makes more sense if I'll switch this over to machines. Let's just say, give me individuals machines, give me 21 of them. Right, and here you can see there's 21 Proliferate Mark III machines, but there's also 3.9 Proliferate Mark III machines that are separate. What the calculator is doing is it's giving you what you asked for. It's giving you 21 machines worth, but it's excluding this proliferator. The proliferator that goes into making the proliferator, as in the items you're proliferating on the belt, that's in a separate line, which is why there's an extra 4 machines up here. These extra 4 machines are making the necessary proliferate to proliferate all the steps up there. This, of course, means that some of this stuff is too much. We should probably turn this down a bit. Say, what was it again? I think it was 700 something over 781. So, yeah, something like that is what we should be aiming for. So 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-ish. So about 22-ish of these should be fine, and build all of this supporting infrastructure. And I'm only going to use the kimberlite ore for this. As in, I'm going to use coal and kimberlite ore in this build, but back over in these carrier rockets, we're going to turn off the kimberlite ore stuff. Well, actually, more importantly, we're just going to turn off Proliferator Mark III. Once we click on that, it has been excluded from this build. All of the ingredients required to make all the Proliferator Mark III is excluded. None of that is required, and all we're left with is everything else, which is why the power footprint has dropped quite a bit as well. There's our power footprint. Wow, 134 megawatts just to run this. That is interesting. However, we are not finished with the Proliferator Mark III. Oh no, we're not. You see, on this planet that we picked, that we went to all the trouble of, there is stalagmite crystals. And the thing about stalagmite crystals is you can use them to make carbon nanotubes. So instead, we can come over here. Instead of making carbon nanotubes with titanium and graphene, we can make the carbon nanotubes by just putting in 6 stalagmite crystals. And that simplifies things down even more. Also drops our power requirements, and actually, we'll put that up to, say, 19 machines. There we go. We were actually dropping a little bit. Because there was less things to proliferate, we didn't need it as much. So you dropped to 789. Anyway, so about 19 machines. This build here should give us all of the proliferator we need to run our rocket build on the other side. And it's just, you'll be doing little tweaks like this. But first, let's go back into the game for a minute. Actually, before we go back into the game, I have to point out something here. We're missing one vital ingredient, sulfuric acid. There's no sulfuric acid listed anywhere here. We've got the kimberlite ore, we've got the organic crystal, not a lot of it to be honest. Stalagmite crystal. Actually, let's check how long that organic crystal is going to last us. We're going to need 131.1 organic crystal per minute. So divide that by 131.1. That would last us, yeah, that many divided by an hour. Okay, so it'll last us 90 hours. Divide that by 4. 22 hours. It's not a long time. However, I went through a lot of systems, and finding the system that was this good and had just about everything we needed and was going to be nice and convenient to set up and had a hydrogen giant, which is absolutely essential for what we're planning, was kind of hard. So you're going to have to make some compromises here and there. So we're going to need to make sure there's some organic crystal within about 10 light years and sulfuric acid within about 10 light years. This over here is our home system, and this over here is the system I decided on. Iota Telescopia. Now, good as it is, we do need a few extra little bits and bobs. So right here, we've got about 1.9 million organic crystal, which should keep us going for another 60 hours or so if we really need it. Pretty sure there's some more lying around the place, but more importantly, over here on this planet Nuscan, there's a sulfuric acid ocean. That means we don't have to actually, well, like, we can send ships from here to Telescopia to carry over the mule over the sulfuric acid we need. We don't need a lot of sulfuric acid, so having just one ship coming in from a further location just works out, and that's why we ended up eventually settling on this location. It just was really, really convenient. So, let's pop over here to Nuska 1. You can click on the planet here and you can see the sulfuric acid ocean type. Also, as well as that, the game seems to allow you to, where is it? Let's say grab this star. You can look in and see there's actually a hive here. So you're able to scout out locations that don't have hives yet and only go to them if you really want to.
Flight mode.
And one thing I should cover is to make warpers, which allow you to warp long distances. The simplest and easiest way to do it is to take green science, take that green science and process it in these machineries, and each one of the green science will spit out 8 space warpers every time you process the recipe. Quite handy. We have, we've loads of them. We've built a whole ton of them because we're going to need them at some point or another. Also, I have turned off research on our home planet because currently it is building a lot of stuff. I completely forgot to mention before I left, you need to make sure you can access stuff while you're abroad. So, we have put together interstellar logistic stations that contain a bunch of the building ingredients. I'm using pile sorters. I'm bringing pile sorters with us, and I'm also bringing sorters Mark IIs. The reason being, I only use sorter Mark IIs or pile sorters. Pile sorters are just amazing. They're absolutely incredible. It's just their power consumption is a little high. So like 144 kilowatts is their work consumption. These things only do 36 kilowatts per work consumption. And the level 3 guys, I don't really see a place for them anymore. They consume 72 kilowatts when they're working. Pile sorters consume twice as much as that. So basically, these level 3 sorters are about like a tenth as good as the pile sorters, but take half the power. So you pay twice the power cost, you get a pile sorter, which is just incredible. It can strip an entire line bare, whereas a regular level 3 sorter just can't come close. So I figure level 2s and pile sorters pretty much cover me in all instances. And there's more stuff over here. We've got mines, wind turbines, furnaces. I can't seem to put together enough logistic towers because I need to boost some stuff on the grid. There's laser towers, a whole bunch of things, thermal power plants, level 3 conveyor belts, fractionators. There's all sorts of stuff. They've all been dumped into logistics towers over there. And there's a lot of spaghetti foo going on. It's a nightmare. It's stuff you don't really want to look at too hard because it just hurts. Anyway, we're going to head over here. To warp between planets, if you've never did it before, it's the caps lock key, assuming you have the prerequisite stuff, which is these things over here, space warpers. And then all you do is you point at the area, make sure you're 1,000 meters from the nearest celestial body, and then
Warp engine activated.
caps lock. Boom. Alright, this might take a minute or so. Alright.
Warp
Oh,
engine
perfect.
deactivated.
Absolutely nailed that landing. Okay, let's find out where we put our stuff. Ah, there we are over there. Perfect. Alright, so
Cruise ended.
this right here is where we're pumping sulfuric acid into a logistics tower. This is the only thing outside of the system. Everything else is in system of what we're going to. This one here is just to get the sulfuric acid, and it saves us a bunch of effort. And this here, all of these wind turbines and random stuff, and I'm pretty sure there's like a solar cap up here somewhere. Yeah, there's like... This is why we're doing all this, because I don't like doing this. Every time you settle down a place, if you just want to make a small mining colony, like this is a small mining colony. Think about that for a second. This is only a small, relatively inefficient mining colony, and it just took an annoying amount of placing down these freaking wind turbines and stuff. And that depends how good the planet is, of course. So, with that done, let's go on to our final stop. This here is Iota Telescopia. Now, if we click on the system, you'll see there's all the resources it's got going on. The center planet, lava planet, that's got the kimberlite ore. So we quickly went over there. We put down some thermal generators. Those geothermal generators for power are actually very handy. I mean, they can run a small mining colony without too much effort. So we just put a kimberlite ore mining station there. Problem solved. Over here is this other planet. It's got fire ice on it. We're going to probably want that at some point, but our home planet here, or the one we've picked on, has already got a bunch of stuff on it, except for the fire ice. But the fire ice, we'll get around to that outpost in a minute. This here, however, is the main reason we're here. Gas giant, hydrogen, and deuterium. We're going to need a bunch of hydrogen and deuterium for what we're going to be doing. And this over here is how much it produces. Now, you got to remember, this actually produces 4 of these. 40 of these. There is 40 of these built around the planet. Every single gas giant can support 40 orbital collectors. And when you look at them, they don't tell you exactly how much they support, but yeah, take a screenshot. It's probably easier. Like if you look over here, it says this has collectible hydrogen 0.8547. There's a whole math thing behind it because these things actually collect more than they give you, but they burn a bunch of it to maintain orbit and to power themselves. There's a whole complicated math shenaniganry behind it. No one cares. It's just, come in here, have a look, it'll sort you out. First up, this thing here, multiplied by 40, tells us that we can harvest, if we build all 40 of those, 17,901 hydrogen per minute. That's a lot of hydrogen. That is an awful lot of hydrogen. But yet, that is a nice amount of hydrogen. I would like that. Multiplying the deuterium by 40 gives us 3,431. We actually only need 2,560 deuterium to build our 100 rockets per minute, which means we don't have to actually fractionate any hydrogen to start with, which is wonderful. That leaves us 17,901 hydrogen to play around with because we can use the deuterium directly from these things to fill up our deuterium production for deuterium fuel cells, which allows us to make the small carrier rockets. Main reason to get orbit or the hydrogen stuff is twofold. One, the deuterium, and second is power. And this is the Tower of Power. It's a whole bunch of hydrogen chucked in here. We have 9 interstellar logistics vessels. They pop up to the gas giant, which is just above us. Because you got to remember, this thing is orbiting that gas giant. It's one of the reasons we also picked this location. Short travel times, or short commute times for hydrogen holders. And then that hydrogen comes down here and gets fed into these thermal power plants. Now, the thing is, I looked it up on the wiki, and it says the thermal power plant consumes 18 hydrogen per minute. We can hold 1800 hydrogen on one of these conveyor belts, which means on one of these conveyor belts we can run 100 thermal generators. We've only got 84, 86 or something, I can't even remember on this, but we can extend it on. As well as that, by using pile sorters, we can stack it up to 4 times higher. So we can not only just put 1800 on there, we could, quadruple that and run about, say 400 on one string. But I'm not going to do that because I'm just not sure the ships can keep up. And then what we did, well, we made a second one on the opposite side. So we have 2 of them running, just burning hydrogen to provide power. Like, each one of them only produces 2.16 megawatts. However, you chain enough of them together, we're up to a generation capacity of 760 megawatts. We don't really have to do anything. All the power that runs this is provided by it bringing down the hydrogen, and this will allow us to run the planet. Now, with that done, it was just a case of tapping into some of the resource nodes around here, and then starting the building process. Before I start getting into the designs, I should probably show you a few things that are that limit you when building on any planet. And the first is this grid. This here is the equator, and you'll see here there's this box-looking thing. That is a 10 by 10 grid. So you can see that's 10 by 10, 10 by 10, 10 by 10, so it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. And then you'll notice that the grid kind of goes out of whack. It's because we're on a sphere. Things have to compress down at some point. So the first 80 tiles, and then this thing goes wonky, and you try not to build on these lines. If you build on these lines, it messes stuff up, so you don't do it. Then, after those 80, we got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then you can just see here it starts going wonky. Apologies for the power brick in the way. So that's 50 right there. And then over here we actually have 25. So it's actually 10, 20, and then a 5 at the end of it. Yeah, you're going to have to take my word for it. We could probably go over there, but yeah, it's 25 there. And it's also 25 in the next range. So 25, 25, 50, 80. And when you go beyond that, this is 15, 15, then 10, 10, 5, 5, 5, all the way to the top. I'm not worried about these top ones. I figured to get the maximum out of the available build area, 25 is what we should work with. The reason being, this is 25, this is 25, this is 50, which divides nice and evenly into 25, and, well, okay, this is not 75, it's 80. That gives us a little bit of extra space. So what we can do is we'll have an extra 10 tiles in the middle, which we'll use for things like, solar panels or something. We'll do something with it, but it does mean that if we build something that's, say, 25 by 25, we can fit 3 of them in this bracket on either side of the planet, and then, actually, 2 of them in the 50 bracket, and 1 in each of the 2 top brackets, which gives us a grand total of, well, 7. We can get 7 builds all the way to the equator, and then 7 the opposite side, which gives us 14, and, there's the organic crystal. I should quickly slap down some mines on these. And organic crystal on the grid. No, there you are. Perfect. Organic crystal stored up. We've loaded it up with those 2 things. We'll sort out the rest later. Alright, now where were we? Before we go into demonstrating all the builds, just a quick example here. This is for the dead space that at the equator that we're not using for anything. We'll probably put solar panels or something there later, but for now, just consider that dead space. And then, actually it's probably easier if we just start over here. Everything between these power poles and these power poles is a build square, or a build section. So there is exactly 24 tiles there. Because it's 25 tiles is the full width we get for each build, but 1 tile, of course, will always be taken up by one of the power poles, which is why it's, 25 per person means it's 24 tiles of actual build space in between the power poles. Then, same again over here, you'll notice that this is exactly 24 tiles wide again, which gives us in between those 2 power poles, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, all the way up to here. So basically, any build we design that will fit inside the 24 tiles can be put in any of these slots without causing any problems. Well, I mean, we'll have to put in some landfill and stuff. But that's it. That's how we're going to build things. Now, let's pop over here and go to... Yeah, this is... like I said, I'd started recording stuff, and then it didn't feel like it fit right. I was trying to explain things to you retroactively. I wanted to try and get across the idea we're going for, rather than the nitty-gritty of how we put inserters on stuff. Right, this is the Proliferator build we had to go with. So this is Proliferator Mark 1, that if just comes down here, immediately turns around 180 degrees and goes right back down again, after getting proliferated, of course. And then we have the incoming... Okay, this is where it gets a little confusing. This stuff you see requires that diamond. Oof. And probably the overarching view. I want to make sure I don't use more than 4 of the slots in any interstellar logistics station. That leaves us an opening to call in space warpers if we want them. Now, I do break this rule a little bit, but by and large, I want to try and keep it to 4, if at all possible. So this only contains these things, and with it, we're able to get our hands on Proliferator Mark III. So all we're calling in is coal, kimberlite ore, and stalagmite crystals. And the plan is that this should be, we should at least be able to crank this up to 4 times the size without having to build a whole new section. So we should be able to extend this on, making this extendable so that we can get up to 400 ships later on in the game. But anyway, over here, kimberlite ore comes out. Kimberlite ore comes out of this thing, gets proliferated, comes down here, gets turned into the diamond. Diamond gets slotted right back across here, gets proliferated again, and fed into these. And then that spits out the Proliferator Mark II, which comes up on this line. It's the green stuff. Gets proliferated and sent in to feed into the Proliferator Mark III, which requires the carbon nanotubes. And because we've got those stalagmite crystals on this planet, all that we need to do is feed in some of that stalagmite crystals into these things, and it immediately spits out the carbon nanotubes. You don't need to do any intermittent processing, anything like that. We just chuck it down and we're done. Cuts down massively on the footprint by doing it this way. And power requirements. Also, we're proliferating the stalagmite crystals so they'll last longer. Of course we are. And then that comes down here, gets proliferated, goes into the proliferator machine, and then the Proliferator Mark III comes out, and the first thing it does is it has a priority feed, where is it? Right here, to feed back in and proliferate itself. So the Proliferator Mark III proliferates itself to make sure that it's the maximum proliferator. Let's just try and grab a chunk here. This has 60 uses, but once we proliferate it, its uses go up to 75. That means by proliferating itself, we get more uses out of it. You know what? It doesn't make a difference. I think we've gone over all of this before. However, how do we make sure that we can expand this out as much as we possibly can? Well, that's to do with one of the later techs. Under upgrades, way out here on the end, in its own separate section at the end of logistic carriers, is Station Integrated Logistics. +1 integration count from logistic stations. +2 integration count, +1. I believe what this does is it allows you to stack things coming directly out of these stations. So when all of these things come out, like this coal here, it's stacked 1 tile high. If you get the first level of research, it should allow you to stack them 2, then 3, then 4. Which means we can run 4 of these. At the same time, say, these guys here, this is actually maxing out this line. You see, going back out to the calculator, if we have 12 Mark II assembler machines, all using Proliferator on them, they will output 1,795 Proliferator. The transport belt can only hold 1,800 per minute. So this is actually maxing out the line almost entirely. We can come back in here and check. We'll just drag this along. You'll notice that we have 12 here. So we actually have 12 of them. They're maxing out the line to their maximum amount. Now over here I've stuck in a pile inserter. Now this pile inserter is just for demonstration purposes, but basically this is able to keep stacking on this until this is 4 tiles high because of the tech we've got. That means that if we wanted to, we could basically run 12, 24, 36, 48 of these, give them all pile inserters, and all of them would be able to run along this one line. Meaning we could just extend this out, and we could have this all running off this one interstellar logistics station, in theory. Thing is, I'm not sure if we can actually pull in the coal fast enough to keep that running with the amount of ships on it. But I suppose if we had other, like if we made sure that the coal stations providing it were dropping it off, then they would definitely be, they should be able to do it. This gives us a good expandability option.
Mineral.
Same with all these things. We should be able to use this research, the station integrated logistics, to crank out the amount coming out, and then use the pile sorters to crank out the amount going back in, and just extend all of these on. The only one where this broke down was over here where I'm an idiot, and I placed it right opposite to these iron veins. We can't really go any further that direction, which means I had to fold this back around. I think I may move this entire setup. This one, oh, this one's messy. Oh, it's so messy. This one here is for making blue motors. And this is the only one where I loaded up all 5 of them, didn't leave any space for warpers. I can still get warpers in here. If you feed warpers into this via a transport belt, if we just ran in a transport belt with warpers from, say, this over here, then what would happen is the warpers would automatically go into this section anyway. This is its own free little slot that will hold 50 warpers, one way or the other. It's very handy. But, yeah, let's maybe go through this. We're bringing in iron bars, copper bars, magnets, and coal. And all of that is outputting blue motors. So these 4 inputs are outputting blue motors, supermagnetic rings, which is... Oh, this is so messy. All right, first up, you got your magnetic rings. So the magnets of the copper get sent out from here. So all of the magnets in copper, where we got it? Here. Magnets and coppers come out. They get turned into those copper rings. Those copper rings come all the way down here, and they get fed into these machines along with the gears. The iron gears are coming from over here. It's just iron plate fed into those things. And then the 2 of those come over here to feed into the motors, along with some iron plates. And this is all proliferated, of course. And then these motors, we couldn't get them to go all the way through here, so we actually curved it, which is... I was getting a little bit tired at the time. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I got to get this built and figure out how it works in my head. You're piecing these things together. And then they come around here and get fed into the green motors. I'm sure there's a special name for them. Electromagnetic turbines. I'm just going to call them green motors, right? Regular motors, green motors, blue motors. We all know what's going on, right? So anyway, this just takes the motors from over there along with some magnetic coils. We are actually producing the magnetic coils over there. So what do we do? Oh, yes. We ran them all the way down, and then we ran them back up and around. So they're already proliferated, fed right back into here. And then those green motors just go right across the road. Like, remember, all it has to do is fit inside 24 tiles, or 25 to 24 tiles. So this came over here, get proliferated, and sent out into the electromagnetic turbines. They require energetic graphite and magnets. Magnets, they just come from over here. The energetic graphite comes from the coal, which we've shipped in. That gets turned into energetic graphite, comes back around here, gets proliferated, magnets get proliferated, they all get fed into these, and out pops our magical blue motors, which we then just send back into this. This was a mess. But in theory, if we didn't have there, we could be like extend this on further in either direction to make more of them. I think I left myself some space down here. I might move that entire build down here at a later date. Let's maybe go through just a little bit more of the theory crafting before I finish off a chunk of this. So back out to the wonderful calculator we go. I know, sorry, you tuned in for Dyson Sphere, and it's like, why am I just seeing calculators all the time? Because it's like half of Dyson Sphere, actually 3/4 is just figuring out how you're trying to get stuff done. All right, my decision was go for the Deuterium fuel rods first. Like, because we turned the Deuterium into the Deuterium fuel rods, and those can be burned in power generators. So even if we need more power, it'd be a good idea to concentrate on getting these first. And so long as we can get those first, then we'll have plenty of power to keep things churning over. Well, that's the theory. And then we just go down and we get the basic resources. For example, we're going to need iron plate to make the gears, the electric motors, all that stuff. Go down, find your iron plate. Go under items, we can see that iron plate is used for green circuits, steel, electric motors, and gears. Ugh, messy. But what it does tell us is we need 33.2 of them. Easy peasy. This is where we're going to bring in our trusty notepad to start taking notes on this. Thing is, we can only put about 4 items in the logistics station. We won't leave 1 free. So we put in the iron ore, which allows us to make the iron plate. And the iron plate we can smelt directly into steel. That gives us 3 things. And then for the 4th one, we want to go magnets. You see, magnets require iron ore to be made. In fact, it might be easier if we went down to iron ore and showed all the things that goes into, which is iron plate and magnets. So that gives us iron ore, iron plate, also gives us magnets. And then we just have to figure out how many of each we got to build. You can see down here as well that we're going to need to do at least 2 stacks of iron plate. It's giving us 1.2 transport belts. That means it's going to take, well, we can't just run 1 transport belt and have that feed all of the smelters. So that means you're going to be doing a double stack of those and a single stack of magnets. And when it comes to the steel, I went with direct insertion for reasons that'll become obvious later. We can't actually proliferate the steel. This is stupid, and I should redo the design, but for now, this is the way it is, so I'm just trying to cover it as legit as I can. So this means we're going to need 17.5 of these. So you want, just checking the numbers off, we're going to need 36 iron plate, 8 steel smelters, and 16 magnet smelters. So that means we're going to need 2 rows of iron smelters. Once you go above 30 in any of these rows, you're going to have to do two rows. So 2 rows of iron, 1 row of magnets, 1 row of steel. Now I've messed this up, of course, but yeah, that's the thing. You're going to start building these, realize you've made mistakes along the way and have to correct them, but this is what should theoretically have happened. You see, where I messed up is I tried to fit them all into the exactly 24 tile wide segment, and oh my god, there's no power to that. That's sloppy. So what happened here was I had this making iron plate, this making iron plate, and then I didn't have enough room to stick in 2 transport belts here and still fit in the magnets. So instead I did direct insertion from these guys into the steel smelters. It's usually a 1-to-1, but we are using a little bit of Proliferator here. Not that it's really necessary for stuff like this, but we were going for consistency. Realistically, what I should have done, and when I started, was actually just done nothing but pure iron smelters on one side, and then maybe have the steel and the magnets on the other. I'll redo that later on, but for now I'm just going to leave this the way it is. You come back out to your little calculator thing here, and what you can do is you can remove the stuff you've already built, just to make things a little bit easier. You don't have to, but I just find it's usually more convenient. Now, where'd that steel go? Yep, steel's gone under its own section here. I'll leave the steel in there because I kind of want to see where that titanium... It goes into titanium alloy, so let's just leave that around for now. But there, that simplifies your tree, and then next up you're going to want to pick the next item on the agenda, which for now I think will be these gears, motors, all this stuff. It's one of the reasons it got done so quickly. Oh no, wait, copper. Sorry, copper first. Copper's pretty handy. We just need 20 copper plate. Easy peasy. Actually, sorry, 21 copper plate. Always round up. Then we just need 1 row of copper. That leaves us with 2 other things we can cram into this logistics station. Simplest thing to do is to chuck in titanium. Now, the reason I'm chucking both of these in is, items-wise, we're not going to start making microcrystalline or circuit boards or anything like that in here. It's too messy. And the same with the titanium stuff. Most of this requires multiple ingredients or is also incredibly messy. So just getting the basic resources knocked out and having them all in one logistics tower just speeds things along. Easy peasy. Logistics station having copper ore, titanium ore, 21 copper plate smelters and 41 titanium plate smelters. Once you go above 30 rows or 30 in a row of smelters, you have to put in a second row. So done. That gets rid of copper plate. That gets rid of titanium plate. And that's the basic idea. You slowly start stripping out all the bits you need and building on it, slow and steady until you've grinded all the things. Now, let's try and find one of the more interesting ones. This one is one of the interesting ones because it's the worst. The problem is, it's tiny. This thing does steel beams or titanium steel beams, whatever they're called, titanium alloy. The problem is it requires 3 ingredients. So the 3 ingredients that go into it plus the 1 output means all 4 are already taken up. Unless we can find a way to combine the titanium ingots, steel and sulfuric acid into something else, we're kind of stuck just having this being very wasteful of space. I mean, we can expand it, and we're going to put in 1, 2, 3... Yeah, we'll be putting in 3 more lines or something like this, or something like that, but it's not really a big deal. This is just sort of... it feels wrong, this one. It's just too small. That is kind of messy and terrible. However, on the other hand, we've got this sucker over here, which we've seen already, the motors one. And the motors one is just... It's beautiful in many ways. You're taking 4 items in, and you're spitting out a very complex item at the end of it. Its only purpose is to produce that item. Now, you got to remember here, we are basically compressing all this stuff down into one super electromagnetic ring. That's all we're doing. We're taking in iron plate, we're taking in copper, smushing that all in there, and this stuff isn't really used anywhere else. Like that energetic graphite isn't used anywhere else, those electromagnetic turbines aren't used anywhere else, and this stuff is all used in the Deuterium fuel rods. In fact, with most of the stuff we've got knocked out, where is it? Yeah, with the magnetic coils we kind of make on the fly. We still don't have circuit boards and all that stuff, but all of the stuff required to make the Deuterium fuel rods, we've got it all already now. That's like, it's all finished. We've got the titanium beams, we've got the blue motors, and the deuterium we can just pull down from space. So let's do a quick over of one of those of this build. Using all the same plans as before, we've just got logistics stations going to contain the titanium beams, the blue motors, and the deuterium. We're going to have to fill it up with that just so that we can produce those deuterium fuel rods. Problem is, there's an awful lot of this deuterium. It takes 20 to make each one of these. Only 1 motor, 1 beam, but like so much of this deuterium. So that's going to saturate the transport belts. You can see it's 1.5 transport belts down here because it maxes out at 1800. Now you can use a calculator to figure out how much you're going to need to divide it up into, but normally all I do, because I am very lazy, is just make a new tab, find the fuel rods, perfect, and then just make it, give me machines and give me 1 of them. And then once that's done, you can come down and you can find out it takes you exactly 100 of this per machine. So that means 18 of them. We can never have more than 18 of those machines in one line, otherwise it'll max out the transport belt and the deuterium won't be able to keep up. Simple. This here is the Interstellar logistics tower we're using. We've crammed it full of the droids, all we need. Deuterium fuel rod, titanium alloy, blue motors, and deuterium. Now, I haven't actually put on demand yet, namely because you might mess this up, you might have to move your tower, you might have to do all sorts of stuff. So I prefer to have it all laid down before I start summoning in the resources, because sometimes you summon them in, mess it up, and have to delete everything, and then you got a whole bunch of junk in your inventory you don't want. Anyway, what was it said? 18 of these in a row? Well, yeah, so we can do 15 like that. Then I do usually an extra one. That's 16, 17, 18. Done. I've mentioned this beforehand, haven't I? Sorry, it's been a while since I started actually doing this, and then I'm like, should you leave this as a demonstration of just how to build one of these? That's 18, and according to this, we need 26, so... Ooh, actually, no. First things first, we'll actually decide where everything's going to go. The thing about this is, the Deuterium, there's 20 of it per build, so you're going to want to place that as close to these as possible. Whatever's got the highest draw amount, and I think I'm just going to use pile sorters for that. Everything else, we're just going to use the level 2s, so you can go there, you can go... there. So that means you can be the Deuterium. Yep, you can be... Well, it doesn't actually matter at this point. You can be Blue Motors. You can be... Yeah, the titanium stuff. And boom, that'll all flow down there and it'll get proliferated. The proliferator is going to come from over here, but that will be a minute. So, you look about right. All we need is an exit point. And... you go... there. Oh, wait a minute. I'd just like to change the locations slightly. Done. Then all we do, grab that, replicate all the way down along. Finished. Okay, so that's 18. We need 26, so we need 8 more. That's actually pretty handy. Blueprint, please. We need 8 of these, so you can go from there to there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. Perfect. And then we shall use you immediately. Line you... Oop. Damn it. Line you up. Why do you have to be so awkward? Excellent. Ooh, maybe not. Squeezing them in here is going to be a little bit tricksy. So... instead, what we can do is you can come out here, change this to there, change this to there. Alright, we also have to make sure that the deuterium's going to end up on a good line. We actually want it on this line, so we have to change things around it, but it's fine. This is why we don't fill up the towers beforehand. Done. Okay, so titanium beams come at that side, the deuterium's still coming in onto those pile sorters. Done, 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 done. And then we just... do this. Perfect. This just... this one's not getting any power. Normally what I like to do is put power poles at the thick lines every 10 tiles. We're going to have to put an extra one right there. That leaves it inconsistent, but it's fine. And also notice, are we out of... yes, we are. We're out of sorters Mark II. Thankfully, what we can do is go up to the top of the map where we've built some of these towers. Which one of you's got the sorters Mark II? Not you. How about you? There we go. Sorter Mark II. I would like, say, give me 400 of those if you got them on hand. Perfect. Chuck them in there. So anything we need we can ship in from our home planets. And you are also out of 4. Fine. Alright, I think that looks about right. Let's fill it up and hope we haven't messed it up. In fact, I'm going to put this down to low levels just to make sure. I think we're fine. So, local demand, local demand, local demand. Where's our titanium alloy? Oh, and remote demand for these guys. The reason you need remote demand is that Deuterium's coming from space. You. Yeah, you're full up. No, not local demand, local supply. How did I mess that one up? Yeah, perfect. Then, that comes down across here. Let's just make sure it all works before we max out the full size of the Interstellar Logistics Station. Oh, and one thing I also forgot to do. We're going to come over here. We're going to grab this. And then we're just going to stretch it across. What do you mean collision? Oh, we're slightly out of line with the last one. That's okay. We'll just hit OR. Now we can do it in straight lines anywhere we want. And with a little bit of a twist, boom. We might have to make changes to that later, but for now... done.
Mineral depleted.
Proliferator kicks in. Now, are any of you guys actually producing? Where is your titanium beams? Oh! Seriously? What's the problem here? You're not going through the whole way. There we go. Much better. Anything missing? Nope, we got 34 deuterium fuel rods already. Nice. I might actually... I was thinking about proliferating the fuel rods before they even go into storage. That might be an idea. I don't normally do this, but considering we use them for fuel, I think I am. Then once we've got that done, we'll take all of them. Thank you. And then we'll dump them on the line here. We want to make sure that they get proliferated. Quick check of the power section. How are we looking? Yeah, power section is just fine. Namely because there's such a backup in the system, most of the system's not actually kicked in yet. And that gets us most of the way to the ships. We still have a bunch more to go, though. And even when I do get this set up, there will be a whole bunch of mining that needs to be done. As in, I'll need to put down mining colonies for, like, we've already got some iron in play, but we'll probably need to put down about 5 or 6 more iron mines. I really think the mining thing about this is one of the weakest things, because you do have to go around and just start putting in mining outposts everywhere. Like, there's our silicon, there's our everything, and there will be more of those, a lot more of those in the future. So, done? Nope, we still gotta do Dyson Sphere components, which requires solar sails, which is going to require photon combiners, which requires prisms, which requires glass. I'm also going to need frame materials. However, we've already got the titanium beams for them done, but that's going to require carbon nanotubes, which is going to require titanium alloy. Oh, actually, no, sorry, we got the titanium alloy done. So, carbon nanotubes shouldn't be that bad. Then, oh yeah, the quantum chips. God, I hate these so much. So, quantum chips. It requires the plane filters, which requires the cashmere crystals. Not cashmere crystals, because you can't wear them. They're not cashmere. That requires some hydrogen. We've got plenty of that floating around the place. Some titanium crystal, some organic crystal, some titanium glass, some water. We're going to need to make processors, but the processors are okay. Reason being is they only need those circuit boards and microcrystalline components. We've actually already got the copper done. So what we need to do is do the high purity silicon. Grab ourselves some copper. Oh, graphene as well. We're going to need fires. Yeah, that's all. Like, I'm going to do all of that sort of in the background and then kick it in summarize it really early the next episode. Because I am, like, way behind getting this out. This was supposed to be, Friday. And today's Wednesday, I think. Yeah, so it's super late. I definitely could have had this out a little bit earlier if I had not restarted the whole thing and included all of the construction phases of building this, but I felt like it didn't really explain the overarching goal of what we were trying to achieve. It was more like, why are we putting this inserter here? It just didn't feel quite as right. And, oh, yeah, I made sure that all of those go up to max. Where is all the ships? Shouldn't there be 10 of them? Oh, yes, there is. 10 ships have gone up to grab themselves some of that deuterium from the gas giant above our heads. Each one can hold 600. We can upgrade that later with, well, we're going to get more research to upgrade that, but that means, yeah, our throughput is going to be limited. That's why I'm kind of worried about our power supply over there. That's not a concern. What we will do here, we'll finish this out. That will give us the ability to smack together a really big Dyson sphere really quickly around here. That will give us the power to wean ourselves entirely off the hydrogen, meaning this thing will be entirely self-sufficient on power. Then what we can do is we can start shipping out the shipping components to other locations. So the next thing up would be to find somewhere else in the galaxy to build, I think, a mall. I was originally going to build a place for about 1,000 science just to not get the last of the science, but I think a mall would be a better idea, namely because, well, we're just not producing stuff fast enough. I'd go back to my home planet now, but it's miles away. But over there, it's a bit slow building stuff out, and I want to build a very powerful mall that can churn out the stuff we really want. So we're going to dedicate an entire planetary system to just being a mall. Yeah, that's probably as dumb as it sounds, but hey, it's the fun of the game. Anyway, I'm going to cut this out here. I hope you enjoyed it. Good luck.